All right, so this video is going to be about how Conor McGregor went from being one of my least favorite fighters to my favorite fighter ever. And I'm going to tell it through the lens of how you never really know who a person is if all they do is win. You never find out who they are till they lose. That's when you really find out who these guys are. And that is going to be the framework that I tell the story of how Conor went from literally someone I always rooted against to someone I will literally never root against now. But before I do that, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, comment, like, etc. Help support the channel. That's all. All you're doing is supporting me if you want to see more of this content. So anyway, when Conor first came into the UFC, he was winning all the time, right? So I don't know who he is. He just looks like this self-aggrandizing loudmouth prick, right? He would bap to his opponent, just obnoxious. And you could just see he was getting under their skin and he was running through guys, but I hadn't seen him run through anyone. As a matter of fact, I will be honest right now, and I'm embarrassed about this because this is one of the few times that I was just kind of wrong about a fighter's skills. When I was watching Conor initially, I didn't see it. And I would say to people, I was like, this guy's going to get exposed when he fights a really, really heavy striker like Aldo. Like I did not see, to me, he looked slow. He looked slow initially. And what I didn't realize is he's just a completely different type of striker where he's not slow, he's loose and he's surgical and he's punching through his target and he has these Gumby long arms. So it looks slow because the punches are longer and because his strikes are longer. So that little, because I'm very sensitive to the speed of striking and how fast it's coming. And so like a guy like Justin Gaethje looks very fast to me, just looks very fast in general. Where Conor McGregor, to an untrained eye, can look a little bit slow. And it's not because they're fast or slow, it's because of the length of the strike. Like Justin Gaethje's here to here, here to here, here to here. And Conor is like here to here, spinning back kick to here. And so it doesn't look as quick, even though it is as fast. And he's much more surgical. It's hitting you with these angles that you've never seen. And he is like, the guy just doesn't miss. So anyway, I didn't see it initially with him. He talked a lot. He was winning fights. He was pissing me off. And he was talking about Aldo. And where the peak of my animosity towards him was the build up to the Aldo fight. Because first of all, I loved Aldo. And it wasn't just that he was fighting Aldo. Is that he was being just outright like abusive to Aldo. Straight up. And I didn't understand Conor then. I didn't understand him because he hadn't lost yet. So I hadn't seen who he really was. So to me then, he's just obnoxious. And Jose Aldo didn't speak English, so he couldn't defend himself. And he just looked like a bully to me that I just hated. And now I will say this. Jose Aldo, you've been the champion for like 7 or 8 years in an American company. Learn to speak English, dude. That's not like a race thing. That's a common sense thing. If I fight in Portugal, then I'm going to learn to speak Portuguese because it's going to be better for my career, right? Like you have no excuse for not speaking English if you fight for the UFC, if you've been the champion for 7 years. Come on. But anyway, he couldn't defend himself and Conor he just mentally annihilated him and then knocked him out in 13 seconds. But then he fought Nate Diaz, right? So, and in the story, how this all unfolded was he was going to fight Rafael dos Anjos for the 155-pound belt and be the first person to ever hold 2 belts. Rafael dos Anjos had to pull out with like 11 days left or 2 weeks left, whatever it was. And Nate Diaz is the one who they gave the fight to, but Nate Diaz is like, look, I can't make 155 on this much notice. And Conor was like, I'll take that at 170. So he goes and he fights him at 170. So right off the bat, I was like, he's going to take that fight at 170? What? Can you guys think of a fighter who's ever gone up 2 weight classes? Guys go weight classes. But can you think of a guy who jumped 2 weight classes with nothing in between? Went from 145 to 170? He agreed to that on 11 days notice? I was like, damn, that is gangster. You know what I mean? Like, that is a ballsy move. I couldn't believe it. And, I thought Nate was going to win. I've laid this out in multiple videos, but I thought he was a terrible matchup for Conor, and the fact that it was at 170 and on short notice. Conor hadn't trained for him, and Conor is a visualization guy. I didn't know this about him then. I didn't know this about him then, so I'm not going to pretend like I did. But in hindsight now, Conor is a visualization guy, and he had been visualizing someone completely different throughout the training camp. And the only 2 times he's ever had problems, up till that point, was when he had taken a short-term notice fighter. So he takes that fight and he loses, right? And in how he lost, he took that like a man. There was a dozen excuses he could have made, and he didn't make any of them. He just owned it. And he said, I mean, literally, like, he owned it. He was devastated. You could just see it. Like, it's not like that was the first time that I saw who he was for real. Like, where it was like the veneer that he had over him when he's doing the press conferences had been lifted, and you saw what the actual man underneath is. And there was a real person there, like, and a guy who knew that a man is going to own that loss, like he did. And they asked him what was next. He said he didn't know. And basically 2 days later, he was like, I want to fight Nate Diaz again at 170 again. And I was like, wow. Like, if you're wired like I am, and this is the kind of conversation that I could have with a lot of people, and they would just kind of look sideways at me and go, what? Like, I was in Lake Tahoe with my family when Wailing and Joanna Jędrzejczyk had their fight, which if you didn't see it, like, go. I mean, it's the most unbelievable female fight ever. And in the middle of the 4th round, I said, to the room, I was like, if this is one of my daughters, like, I would cry. I would be so proud of them. And my dad and brother were like, are you out of your mind? Like, they couldn't even process that. They're like, these girls' faces are blown up. Like, what are you talking? Your daughter? Because I have 3 daughters, and I was like, if this is one of my daughters, I can't even. I would cry. I'd be so proud. And they just are like, that's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. They just don't. They don't understand. And by the same token, it's like a warrior, or like a person who's wired for combat, for lack of a better way of. That's not even the right way to say it either. If you're a person who understands, then you understand, right? There's nothing that you respect more than Conor saying, I'm not taking another fight. I'm taking Nate Diaz at 170, and I'm not doing any press. And I was like, wow. So this guy could fight, and he could just say, that was a BS fight. I took it on short notice. It was at 170, whatever. I'm done with that. I'm moving on to fighting for the 155-pound belt, defending my 145. He had any fight he wanted on the table. And the fight he demanded was the same fight that clearly was one of the worst matchups for him ever. And he did it at 170. And then he refused to do any press. And that was the thing where he's like, I'm not doing any press. He was a press monkey before that. All he did was press, yell at his opponents, yada, yada, yada. And he said, I need to focus on beating this man who's bigger than me, who's longer, who has incredible endurance and an iron chin. If I'm going to beat this man, I can't focus on anything else. And I was like, oh, God damn. And that was it. And first of all, I rooted for him and I bet on him. I don't even know if I bet that fight, but I rooted for him as hard as I've ever rooted for anyone. And he won. Fuck, man. The fucking balls on that. It's like, I love that shit. I love this sport. I just can't even. It's the best sport ever. Ever. And that is why I want John Jones to fight DC one more time. Or actually, why I want DC to fight John Jones one more time. Because if DC wins that fight, I mean, it would be the best thing ever. But that is when Conor became my favorite fighter, where I was like, and then I started really paying attention. Because when you don't like a guy, it's easy to just not like people, right? Like you look at politics right now. There are all these like symbols people have. They're like, I hate AOC. Okay, like, do you actually really watch a lot of her like full interviews? Because you might disagree with her on some stuff, but I guarantee you, like, if you actually watch and listen to her, she might have some stupid ideas. You wouldn't hate her as a person. You're listening to sound bites, right? Same on the other side. People are, I hate Trump. Okay, well, I mean, you didn't hate Trump before he was president, right? Or before he was running for president. You knew who he was. I never heard anybody like, I hate that guy. You know, he ran for president for publicity, and he happened to win. He struck a chord. And now you hate him that passionately? It's like, it's the exact same thing as AOC. It's like you're getting sound bites fed to you by people who are trying to make you hate him. Same thing with AOC. It's like, so you don't know who he is, and you don't know who she is. And I didn't know who Conor was. And then when I started paying attention, all I saw was traits that I respected, and it reframed everything he had done in the past too, where I was like, oh, he's beating these guys mentally before they even get in the octagon. He's a tactician. He's breaking them mentally. And I looked at every one of the pre-fights going into the Nate Diaz fight, and that's exactly what I saw. I saw a surgical mental warfare fucking genius. And then, then he fought Eddie Alvarez. And Eddie Alvarez definitely was not broken by the mental game. There was none of that. That is not why he beat Eddie Alvarez. The next fight is when he showcased his skills. He annihilated Eddie Alvarez. And Eddie Alvarez was a game fighter that no one thought would lose that fight. And so between those two fights, it went from I almost can't even get through explaining how gangster that Nate Diaz thing was. And then the showcase of his fucking skills in the next fight. And it was just like, that's it. Like, this is my guy. Then he fought Mayweather, Khabib, Cowboy, but I'll never root against that guy ever again. Ever. If he fights Masvidal, my brain's going to explode. And I could do a whole other video about why I love Masvidal as much as I love Conor, but it's actually a little bit different, but I love that guy too. Anyway, so that's the story on Conor.